And we welcome you to this blackandgoldbanneret.com special here, post-game instant reaction, knee-jerk reactions, if you will, the video version, folks. Eric Lopez here at home. Look at that. Introduce yourself, Mr. Andrew.
Andrew Gluchov. I am the writer of the knee-jerk reactions.
That's correct. And you know, the man does new introduction. He's in Houston right now in the stadium right there, fresh off the UCF win. Mr. Brian Murphy, live from Houston. Hello, as Larry King would say.
Hello. How is everyone? Everyone is feeling pretty good, I assume, after that one.
That was a pretty interesting, eventful trip, Murph. We'll get to some of the news prior to the game that we'll get into later. But let's talk about this game, UCF victorious. What has stood out to you so far from this performance from UCF? Pretty remarkable. Defense shorthanded, lots of concern. Oh, they're going to give up 70 points, blah, blah, blah. And they play their best game of the year. Go figure.
It's amazing, right? Like, we try to break things down and figure things out and predict things. Why do we try to predict things? It never works. And so here's a situation in which UCF is missing 4 starters, basically, on defense, and they shut down a really high-powered offense in Houston. They can't throw the ball. They really shut down the running game really well. A couple turnovers, a few sacks. For this defense, what we've seen out of UCF's defense this year, to play like that on that field without the likes of Eric Mitchell, Kenny Tunier, Ray Charlton, obviously Antoine Collier as well, it does speak to the depth of the defense, the depth of it, but also just the guys' preparedness and how well they were coached up during the week to be ready in case they need to step up like they did today.
It was pretty remarkable. What was said? I know you just came down after the post game. What were the Coach Heupel and the players' reaction to the on the field performance?
Well, yeah. So obviously there were questions about Antoine Collier in that situation. Coach Heupel would not address that. He said today is about the guys who are here on this trip. He called it the best defensive performance that this team has had this year, and that back-to-back weeks this team has made massive. He talked about how this team has made improvements. Dylan Gabriel talked about how. He said Dylan Gabriel was asked if he was concerned about missing so many starters on defense. And he said, I wasn't really concerned. I was more excited for the guys who are going to have a chance to step up. And so I think all those guys feel that. Those guys feel that the guys like Derek Gaines and Landon Woodson, the guys who had chances to play more today, all of the team was excited for those guys. And they lived up to the billing. They did their part.
Andrew, go ahead. You got a question for Murph?
Well, one of the benefits of being at the game, in the box, is you see things that we don't see, sitting at home on our comfy couch. During the game, especially in the second half, Dylan Gabriel took some nasty hits. Yeah. He took a few shots. He was slow to get up. He was favoring that non-throwing shoulder. Did you see anything that on the sidelines or whatnot when he went off the field that showed any signs of injury? How was he when he started addressing the media? Yeah, no, I didn't. He wasn't wearing an ice pack or anything like that in the media. He was. I thought I kept looking to the sidelines to see if he was hurt. Or trying to do some therapy. Nothing was going on the sidelines. Late in the game, he did have the late touchdown to Ryan O'Keefe, which kind of showed you that his arm was at least good enough to make that throw. Yes, he got dinged up, absolutely. He took some hard shots, but I think overall he made it through relatively unscathed. And I think in the second half, when he really struggled, it was more about how the defense was playing them and really was allowing the running game to get going. And UCF took advantage with Otis Anderson and Greg McCray and Bentavious Thompson just gashing them in the second half on the ground. So looking at, you alluded to, missing 5 defensive starters or 4 defensive starters and Brandon Moore, who's not active. Mm-hmm. It's not, my question isn't what they did wrong, but it's what the replacements did right. Yeah. And basically the audition tape they just created. From your take, where do you see this going into the bye week, leading up to Temple in 2 weeks? Well, I was impressed with the amount of push the defensive front got, especially with guys like Noah Hancock and Cam Good, a couple of guys who, again, getting the playing time today because of who's not here. I thought the push-up front was really good. And then on the back end, there weren't any major busts. So, yeah, you had Derek Gaines filling in for Collier at safety. You had Devod Wilson making his UCF debut here today and making some decent plays in the second half of that game out at DB. He played nickel for most of the game when he played. So those guys
showed that when called upon, they can really perform. And they performed against a really, really dangerous offense. People need to understand, like, I think that for those who don't know, Houston averages 37 points a game, 450 yards. They scored 7 points offensively today. It's amazing what this defense did considering how shorthanded it was.
Really was. And I thought offensively, I thought they played complimentary football. I know they were, some people were kind of squeamish after that third quarter. They were struggling, but I really enjoyed that fourth quarter running the football at Houston. Houston, you mentioned it as you were tweeting during the game. Houston's very good up front against the run defense. They put a lot of pressure on Dylan Gabriel, which I'm sure we'll get into. But the rushing attack, 353 yards, I believe. And it didn't matter if it was Anderson, McCray, or Thompson. I thought they were physical. I thought they put their will in there, and I think they made Houston tap. And I think that physicality from UCF I liked a lot, and that's something that they didn't have and was, I think, one of the reasons why they've blown some leads in the past and this year in particular. I thought that was a huge sign to see that team kind of put their will there and dominate up front, especially with that running game.
Yeah, more than 200 rushing yards in the second half alone. And I'll give them credit. The offensive line did their job absolutely, and I think you saw the running backs really see to have good vision for some cutback lanes. And then when they get in the open field, there's some speed, but there's also some great tackle breaking ability here by all of those guys. Just refuse to go down on first contact. I think most highlighted by Greg McCray on third down. It was like third and 19, and he runs for, I believe, 22 yards, where he is stopped a good 5 yards shy of the marker and just sort of muscles and backpedals his way to a first down. And that was late in the game where UCF had, pretty much salted this one away. He could have gone down. He didn't. It is. You're right, Eric. They made them tap because not only were they running it successfully, but those guys ran very physically. And after a while, the defense it's a hard time for the defense to react to that over and over again.
It was tremendous there. Brian, let's get to the news now a little bit. Off the field stuff we knew about, obviously Collier going in. Just kind of give us a recap of the guys that missed the game that you saw, and then obviously the post-game reaction of that.
So obviously Antoine Collier is not here. He's obviously been charged with one felony and one misdemeanor, stemming from a Thursday morning arrest. And then the players who weren't here also include Randy Charlton, Kenny Tunier, Brandon Moore, and Eric Mitchell. Now, there's body cam video of this entire incident, both of the car that Collier was in and the car that Collier was in, which he was driving, had Aaron Robinson, Brandon Moore, and Eric Mitchell with him. But also has body cam video of a second car of UCF football players who, once they saw that Collier had been pulled over, they stopped and got out of their car and were on the side of the road across the street, kind of watching events unfold. They interacted with officers too. That includes Tunier and Charlton. And look, I don't know specifically why, guys like Mitchell and Charlton and Tunier weren't here. And I also don't know if they've been suspended. I heard that we're going to get a statement from the team tonight, hopefully tonight, but an official statement from the team. Again, Heupel would not address it after the game today. Just looking at all the body camera footage that's out there, I would have to believe that for some of those guys, like Charlton and Tunier, they were pretty aggressive, and Brandon Moore too. They were yelling a lot. They were talking about how it's wrong. What the cops are doing is wrong. And I wonder if the coaches basically told them to not come on this trip because of how they interacted with the officers. And that's the only way that I can look at the tape and see what we saw out here, who's not here, and say, well, why aren't they here? It must have been something they did while talking to the officers and being as angry as they were, as emotional as they were too. I mean, it's hard, Eric. It's hard for me to kind of. I get it a lot of the optics of it, but these guys are emotional. They're seeing one of their teammates, their brothers, as they all say, is getting arrested. They're going to be upset, and even if they don't understand that he's being arrested because he did break the law, they're going to be emotional. They're going to be angry. They're going to be yelling, and so because of that reaction, though, I think that played a big role in them not being here today.
Well, hopefully we'll see if we get some clear. You mentioned Josh Heupel come out of the statement. What was the post game like about that? You mentioned that questions was addressed. Take me through that post game. What was the mood like as you all were asking Coach? I'm sure when that questions came up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a lot. It was a lot less tense than if they had lost this game, I guess. Josh really shrugged it off, saying that this day is for the guys who are here. He's happy with how his team played today. For those who are here, I think Dylan Gabriel said it's disappointing for those who aren't here, but it's equally as exciting for those who made the trip and were able to perform the way they performed. And I think the guys understand, like they feel for those who aren't here. They obviously they wanted them to be here, but they knew they also had a job to do. They had to go out here and prepare to win a football game, and they did that. And so I think Josh Heupel, more than anything, just wanted to talk about the successful defense, the running game, and getting an emphatic win on the road against a good team. Again, as I wrote on the site this week in our roundtable, I don't think this is, it's hard. This might be the best road win this team has had against a good team since Memphis in 2018. Like, it's been a long time since this team has had a good win against a good team on the road.
Certainly can make that case on there. What did you see on the field? I know me and Andrew will go into this a little bit more after we let you go, but with those guys gone, did you see anything different schematically, defensively? Did you sense any energy difference on the defensive side of the ball? Because sometimes short term, at least, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about, whatever their status will be moving forward and the impact of all that. But I thought, sometimes when you lose guys, other guys step up. That's their opportunity, and they raise their game short term. What did you see on the field? Did you notice a different attitude, energy with those guys that know, hey, this is my chance to shine now?
Yeah, and, well, it's hard to say because obviously the defensive line really started getting some good push last week against Tulane, right? This just seemed like a continuation of that, but with different guys, like with Noah Hancock and Landon Woodson, who played well on the edge. Cam Good, who we've seen start before, but really is more of a backup so far this year. Those guys played really well. In the back end, again, there were not any major busts with guys like Derek Gaines. Also, I haven't even mentioned Tatum Bethune, who I believe was UCF's either leading or second leading tackler in this game. I believe Gaines was the leader, actually. So both those guys getting their playing time all played well. I don't think it was anything structurally different, not schematically different. UCF played their 4-2-5 setup with a lot of 4-man pressure, 5-man pressures. It was just the guys who were out there really, really performed. And on this day, UCF's defense looked as good as they had, as better than they ever have this season, which, again, is just amazing to say with the guys who aren't here.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes adversity, situations like this to learn about your players, right? And the old one coach always used to say, how do you know you have depth when those players step up and play? And I think if nothing else, UCF found out they got some guys that could step up here. And I think that's big. They'll get a bye week to kind of figure all this out, sort all this mess out before they get set for Temple there. Andrew, you got any last questions for Murph here from Houston?
Not really. I mean, you kind of took a lot of my personal thunder, but I apologize for my dog going insane. Halloween, trick or treat time. UCF getting the sweet end of the victory this time. But Murph, what's on the docket the rest of the way in Houston before you come home?
I'm actually off to see some family, so that'll be nice. And then I'll share this. No one else knows this except for Dan Porcella, our beloved sports information director.
Oh.
During the second quarter of this game today, my wheelchair seat broke. The seat broke. What that means is the bolts that nail the seat and connect it to the chair have given away off one side of the chair. This, guys, is a problem, which is why I'm coming at you from a side angle, because I cannot put any weight on the right side of my wheelchair right now.
What did you do?
I don't know. I did nothing. I was sitting and I just heard a rip. Now, this is a really sad way for the university to tell me that I am overweight. Really, a really sad way for the university to inform me of this. It could have been done in nicer fashion than basically straightening me with half a wheelchair on the road. I'm so happy that we're on bye. I need a bye week to fix everything about this.
You and Josh Heupel, you all need a bye week. We all need a bye week, I think. All right. Well, we'll let you go then. Hopefully you're safe and sound and you're moving around. Enjoy your time there in Houston, and we'll talk to you later in the week when you get back.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Andrew.
That's Brian Murphy from the stadium over there in Houston with mechanical issues. I tell you, we all need bye weeks right
Oh man,
now.
he needs a hover chair. He needs like one of those from like the X-Men or something.
Yeah, that you're correct on that. But he finds a way. It's always an adventure with him. Your thoughts here. Let's get a couple of your thoughts here now in this game. What stood out to you about this game, watching the game? You heard what Brian's thoughts were. What were your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that you talked about was, and you called it the balance of the offense. I actually call it offensive meatloaf, because you can have with meatloaf three dozen meatloafs on 3 dozen different days, and they're all good and they're all different. The situation is presented one way. It's not what you normally do. You change to adapt to it. And that's what the UCF offense did. The pass protection was not having a great day. Dylan Gabriel got hit a lot. He took a number of sacks. They had this scoop and score in the first quarter. And it was not a great day. They did have some good plays that did open up the offense, like those 2 O'Keefe touchdown passes where the line just held their own. However, there were a lot of breaks. And offensive line blocking schemes very differently between passing protection and run blocking. Pass protection is just that. It's defensive based. It wasn't working. So they switched to an offensive based blocking scheme, which is run blocking, which is about explosiveness. Instead of just agility, it's about power and moving players and getting them off their base. And that opened the door for this running game. I mean, Houston gave up, 105 yards per game coming into this, tops in the American, and they got blown up. They got embarrassed. In fact, Greg McCrae had over 105 yards on his own. He finished with 107, and that's just one guy. And unfortunately, Bentavious Thompson fell a little bit short. He only had 87 yards, but we could have had a trifecta of 100-yard rushers today. And they were just eating alive that Houston defense. And perhaps it's a case of pass to set up the run, because UCF really is a passing team. I mean, when you have Dylan Gabriel, who had an off day of 328 yards, an off day, you obviously have a very strong pass team. And, he had a little rough spot, especially in the third quarter, and the team adapted. That's good coaching, and that's good execution. I think we need to recognize the fact that the offensive coaches took what was presented to them, saw what was working, saw what wasn't working, and when things stopped working mid-game, they changed it on the fly. And I don't think that gets recognized enough. We us armchair quarterbacks, we can talk until the cows come home saying all these things of, oh, they don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. They're not making adjustments. Well, here's an adjustment that was done on the fly. They redid the entire offensive scheme, going away from the pass, focused on the run, and look what they did. They made Swiss cheese of Houston.
Agreed. I'm glad you said that, because I kind of feel now, Andrew, my worry is, all the talk after the Tulane game, articles written about, is this, this could be the greatest offense in the history of college football, and they're on pace for this or that. And I worry that now the standards are so high that we're going to nitpick everything, right? Like, I feel like you're a Cleveland fan, so you know this with LeBron James, who gets nitpicked every possession, what he does, right? And I feel like sometimes we do this with the UCF offense, where we're going to nitpick, and God forbid they have to punt once in a while or things don't go smoothly. We kind of like, oh, what's wrong with the offense? When in reality, sometimes you just, you're not going to be on top of your game every game. By the way, they still scored 44 points. Ended up with how many yards? Over 600, I think they had.
Yeah, it was a little over 600 yards.
And we were like, what's wrong? What's wrong with them? So I thought, you made a great point. The passing game wasn't in sync. The pass protection wasn't great. What is he, 6 sacks of Dylan?
Yeah.
That was the big concern. I know you were real concerned, disappointed with that performance from the offensive line. But, however, they did a heck of a job run blocking and dominated in that line of scrimmage. So how do you equate that offensive line performance? Not great pass protection, but great run blocking.
Well, it's not even just I was disappointed in the line. I was disappointed in Dylan Gabriel. And this seems to be a recurring theme, especially on the road. When he deals with the heavy pressure, he gets the happy feet. He ran into the guy trying to tackle him. I mean, there needs to be some work on his pocket presence and how to move around when the pocket breaks down on the road. It's like it's two different quarterbacks. At home, he's a lot more poised. He's more comfortable. He's surveying the field a little bit better. This time, he seemed very frantic. I mean, he lost 14 yards on a sack where he just kind of ran in a zigzag like an alligator was chasing him, and then turned around and there was the alligator, chomping down on him. So, I mean, it's not just the offensive line. And that's where, I go back to the coaching staff making adjustments. Okay, this isn't working. Change it up. But you're right. I don't think this is the greatest offense of all time. I'm sorry. LSU last year is just absolutely amazing. And they did it against tougher opponents. I mean, the American's an excellent conference, but they're not the SEC West. Let's be honest. However, this is arguably the greatest offense UCF has ever had, and we need to enjoy it. We need to relish it because you don't get these opportunities to break records every day. This is a magical time. Even though UCF lost a couple games they should not have, they did, but the season's not over. They're still playing for a bowl game. There are still 37 bowls up there, and UCF's a prime suspect to be picked for one. They're still in the hunt for a conference championship berth. The Houston losing helps. They're going to need some more help, but I mean, they're still in the hunt. There's still season to go. So the season's not over. I mean, I think we've become a little complacent in our expectations where, it's New Year's 6 or bust. But how many teams make the New Year's 6 out of the group of 5? One. The fact that UCF has already done it twice and no one else has, I mean, that's amazing in itself. So, I mean, it's not a bust of a year. Heck, most of the Power 5 don't make it to those bowl games, and they still have a pretty good year. I think we're taking advantage of the golden age of UCF football a little bit too much. And some of us who've lived through the dark ages, a couple winless seasons and the yo-yo that was George O'Leary's career in the early half of his early half in the 2000s. We have some tempered expectations and are enjoying what we're having. So maybe it just comes with age and perspective, and maybe I just call this old, but we need to enjoy the ride.
Let's be glad we have football. That's not the case in some teams right now with what we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Ask Wisconsin right now. Who knows when they're going to play another football game with what they're dealing with up in Madison over there. Last couple thoughts. Defensively, what stood out to you? What's your big takeaway? I want people to read your article for knee-jerk reactions, so I don't want to give away too much. But give me your thoughts, your biggest takeaway from this game, either on the defensive side of the game and moving forward here as they get set to play Temple after the bye week.
Well, it's all about who's the players that had to come in unexpectedly and stepped up, and every one of them did a pretty good job. It's funny, the ones who were quiet were the ones who were regular players for the most part. I mean, Aaron Robinson was an exception, but he was a leader in the defensive backfield. Richie Grant's always up there because that's just how he rolls. But Derek Gaines, Tatum Bethune, I actually critiqued Bethune's game last week, not in the article, but just in my notes, talking about how he's still kind of a step behind as far as making his reads, and that comes with inexperience. Well, today it was like a different player. He was all over the place. Basically, he was Eric Mitchell with an extra step, and had sound tackling. We saw a lot of good textbook tackling, not as much arm tackling that leads to large gains that never work out well for anyone. So I'm very impressed with the guys who stepped up. And the other thing is I actually like the fact that UCF did settle for field goals. Daniel Obarski is much alive. He's been absolutely the recipient of so much ire since the collapse of the Memphis game. And while it's rough for one guy to take all that, and it's not all his fault, kicking a 40-yard field goal is not a chip shot. It isn't. A lot of players can't kick 40-yard field goals. And in Division I athletics, sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't, as far as a good player. It's nice that he was able to get out there and hit a few that didn't cost the game. And yeah, he missed one he should have hit. And I know the coaching staff's going to be looking at other options next year. They'd be foolish not to, even when, he hits these kicks. Even when Matthew Wright was the kicker, they were bringing people in. That's just what you do. You just have to fight to keep your spot. I think he needed a confidence booster. I think this was a good game for it. And I think UCF as a whole benefits from it because you need those special teams to be on point because you are expecting those points and there's no guarantee that you get them. So obviously you want as much confidence in your kicker as you can because that's probably one of the, if not the most stressful position because you are a lone wolf.
You're right. I think there's a lot of positives here from what we saw on the field, and you hope they build on this in a couple of weeks against Temple, and more specifically when Cincinnati comes here, Andrew, because I think you and I are on the same page on this. I've seen Cincinnati now the last 2 weeks blow out SMU and destroyed Memphis. Their defense is legit. It's a top defense there. They held Memphis to 10 points, held SMU to 13. But the big thing is Ritter has taken his game to a different level the last couple of weeks offensively. Luke Fickell and his team is for real. I think this is his best team. It's better than last year's team that won the division when we had a division in the American. This team is loaded, and I think they're going to be undefeated when they come here to Orlando on November 21st, which is, it's unfortunate if UCF could have held on to those leads against Tulsa and or Memphis. We could have had a gigantic matchup here November 21st, like monster matchup. But as it is, it's a huge matchup, and Cincinnati right now is the Americans' best shot perhaps for that New Year's Six slot, and right now is the favorite for the league. So we'll see if UCF can improve their level, especially defensively. Like if they could play like they did today, that could be a whale of a ball game there.
That was one reason why I was so disappointed with Clemson coming back to beat Boston College. Here's the truth. If Cincinnati beats UCF, it's in UCF's and the Americans' best interest that they go all the way. You need a school to kind of carry that banner. And I know a lot of fans don't agree with that. It's basically their school or bust. But part of being a conference is we need each other. And that's the deal. We as a conference, and I'm speaking to AAC as a whole, need as much boost as possible, especially when you're trying to push, that Power 6 narrative. You want the team on the field to be able to play against those Power 5 teams in those big bowl games where you're getting 8, 10, 12 million people watching your product. I mean, Cincinnati's scary good. I mean, they're taking down teams that put up a lot of points, and they're making it look easy. I thought when the running back Warren left, I thought that was it. Okay, these guys,
Me too.
They're done. They're overrated. They're going to come back down to earth. Ritter's a good quarterback, but he's only serviceable at best. He's a game manager. No, that's not what happened now. Cincinnati has taken their game to another level, much like Dylan Gabriel has taken his game to another level, just in a different way. And it's exciting to watch. I mean, as a fan of the game in general, they're fun to watch. I mean, they not only are beating teams by putting on points, but they're embarrassing the other side of the ball. I mean, that's fun to watch as a fan. You don't have to just be a fan of that team. Just be a fan of the game and just enjoy what we're watching, which is a team out of the American showing that, hey, maybe they're one of the top 4 teams in the country. And before it's all said and done, we're going to see some teams lose in that top 6. And it's very possible that one could be losing today.
Well, look at it this way. Clemson,
Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma State's in a dogfight.
Right.
Cincinnati would benefit from that. In fact, Cincinnati stands to benefit from the fact that they had such a blowout win. They could potentially jump up even without that result, going Texas's way. This team's just that good. So if they play UCF and they win, as a fan of UCF, I want them to go undefeated at that point. Just take it all the way. Obviously, we want the Knights to win, but if they don't, we should be supportive of our conference mate because they're not, the hated rival.
Going to step up the league. You mentioned that Big 12. Michigan lost to Michigan State. It looks like the Big 10 is going to be one bid more than likely. It's going to be Ohio State. It should be in theory, but you never know.
Ohio State's just a whole.
Yeah.
They are one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah.
They were rated number 2 going into the season before COVID hit and derailed the season. That's not coincidence, and it's only a matter of time before they claw their way back up to that.
It should be, yeah. We record this. And Clemson, obviously, got their issues. They go to Notre Dame. You don't know what's going to happen there. No Trevor Lawrence for the Notre Dame game next week, by the way. Dabo Swinney said that in the postgame, so who knows what that means. If Clemson were to lose at Notre Dame, what could that mean to them? That remains to be seen. You mentioned Oklahoma State. Well, can they go undefeated? Who knows? That 4th spot. I mean, this could be a quirky year in the playoff, and you never know. A team could slip in. But then again, UCF could be the spoiler to that. UCF's trying to backdoor into the conference championship game. They're going to need some help. We thought they were going to get some help Friday night when East Carolina was on the apparent, was going to get that win, but some calls didn't go their way, which the league has acknowledged on Saturday as Tulsa survives. So Tulsa stays undefeated, which I think is good for the league, probably not, but not good for UCF or ECU. That was a long flight for ECU.
Well, and that's not their fault. That was unbelievable. That was jaw-dropping, unbelievable how ECU, tanked.
Take care of that, Andrew. Take care of that. Happy Halloween, sir. Folks, check out his knee-jerk reactions for the postgame there as he takes care of his Halloween activities. That'll wrap it up here. Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy joining us from Houston, Andrew joining us here on the postgame. Keep it on blackandgobanneret.com for all the latest coverage in UCF sports. I'm Eric Lopez saying good night, and the Knights win 44-21.